On today's World Insight with Tian Wei, Jack Ma steps down as chairman of Alibaba, and Pulitzer Prize winner Thomas Friedman's view on China-U.S. trade.
With China, we are completely interdependent. Okay, so
here is our host, Tian Wei.
Hello and welcome to World Insight, coming to you live from Beijing on CGTN. Alibaba's co-founder Jack Ma stepped down from the position of chairman of the internet giant. His legendary career is best known as rags to riches story in China. Although he announced his departure a year ago, the move still sparked widespread discussion about the future of both himself and Alibaba, as well as a totally different generation of entrepreneurs from China. Take a look.
At the age of 55, Jack Ma relinquished his most powerful title, the executive chairman of Alibaba. He now intends to spend more time on his numerous passions. Many people still remember his complaints about his own success.
Biggest mistake was I made Alibaba. I never thought this thing changed my life. I was just like trying to do a small business and grow that big, take that much responsibility, and got so much trouble. Every day is like as busy as like a president, and I don't have any power. And then I don't have my life.
The glory of the internet giant Alibaba started back in 1999. Without a background in computing or finance, Ma managed to kick out eBay and Yahoo from the Chinese market. He also changed the way the Chinese shop. 20 years after its establishment, Alibaba has become a global empire, spanning online retail, cloud computing, digital banking, and even entertainment. It boasts a market value of $460 billion. His commercial empire created millions of jobs, but many question whether AI will slash these figures. But Ma dispels these fears.
The first technology revolution killed a lot of jobs, created even more jobs. Second technology revolution killed a lot of jobs and created more jobs. We are going to create more jobs. This is for sure.
The former English teacher has more than once mentioned his passion for education. In 2016, the Jack Ma Foundation launched a rural education program to offer on-the-job training for teachers and headmasters in China's most resource-deprived areas.
The only thing I worry about is education. Think about our kids. If we teach our kids the same way we taught in the last 100 years, they are going to have no jobs.
September 10th is China's Teachers' Day. It also marks the anniversary of Alibaba, and now the date also signals the day Ma leaves Alibaba to go back to education.
For Jack Ma stepping down, for him to take on a new different stage of his life, as well as different stage for Alibaba to continue its business around the world. In Beijing, we have Liu Baocheng, Dean of the Center for International Business Ethics from the University of International Business and Economics, also joining us in Beijing. Rick Dunham, co-director of the Global Business Journalism Program at Tsinghua University. Gentlemen, welcome to our program. I hope we are waking up to this news in a way, because this is supposed to be the richest man from China. The chairman of Alibaba, Jack Ma, stepping down after decades active and charismatic on the stage. What do you think, Professor Liu, briefly, if you can, to characterize the career of Jack Ma? I mean, of course, his relations with Alibaba to begin with.
He really is a legendary, and he came from a background of being a teacher, and then he's there to grab opportunities that is really presented by the internet technology, which was still a dangerous investment for him with all his energy, etc. But you know, several years later, he just kept to be able to harvest these big opportunities. So therefore, he's greedy, and he's also wise enough, and he's really there so much resolve to motivate his partners to go along a very difficult track, but now are able to harvest a big yield.
Now The company is valued at about 460 billion. Mr. Ma is China's richest man, according to the latest figure. In the quarter ended June the 30th, Alibaba earned a revenue of 115 billion yuan, up 42% year on year. Alibaba's annual active customers hit 24 billion yuan, with mobile monthly active users of 755 million. Rick, while you are looking at these numbers, are you also a user of Alibaba, at least
Yes.
its platform?
I am, and
Just like many Chinese here.
right, exactly. And I mean, I am in awe of what he's been able to accomplish. I mean, he's an entrepreneur who turned a small company, a visionary who turned a small company into a huge company. He both has a vision to innovate, but he also has an ability to manage a huge operation, and he has a global reputation. I mean, he's a charismatic figure, and he's well respected all around the world. I mean, I think he's the best known CEO from China, but he's also one of the best known businessmen in the entire world. He can speak in Davos to business leaders. He can speak in the United States to investors. Just as well as he can speak and inspire people in China.
One of the very few, actually, among the Chinese community who can really do that when it comes to international communication. And having said that, though, what is the nature of Alibaba today? Professor Liu, since you are a professor of trade and also professor of business ethics, what is a company Alibaba in your eyes?
Well, Alibaba is really shaking the lifestyle of more than 700 million people, and it's really a revolutionary change, and also shake the entire business landscape by demolishing so many brick and mortar businesses, and make the business turn out into a new shape, and also that's also a creative channel he has created. And then the other is that the internationalization, globalization, that he is able to support his platform to benefit the whole world, and that really gives a lot more credit for Chinese businesses around the global marketplace.
Now, here comes the question. What about the transition from Jack Ma to the next generation of managers of Alibaba? What kinds of transition when it comes to nature of this? It's really coming from the entrepreneur, the founder, to now a professional manager.
Right. Well, I think that what we're going to see is a more staid style of leadership. We won't see the same kind of outgoing figure who dresses as Michael Jackson or some of the very public
well, that's
displays.
only during the festive galas, of course.
Exactly.
Not always every day.
At the same time, I think you will see continued innovation. I mean, you can't have a company that just rests on its laurels and lives in the world of 2019. I mean, Jack Ma was a digital disruptor of commerce, of banking, and I think Alibaba has to stay on the cutting edge of digital change. And I think that his choice to lead Alibaba, Mr. Zhang, was very important in the 11/11 movement, the Singles Day, and he has turned that into a global phenomenon. So I think we've seen, even though he's not as much of a public charismatic figure, he is somebody who is willing to try different things and has had
when
success.
you talk about next generation, there's also the next generation of technology. Of course, artificial intelligence these days, even some of the other technologies are pretty much talked about. But exactly what kind of change? Jack Ma, in an earlier discussion with Elon Musk just a few days ago, has been talking about what kind of change AI is likely to bring to the workforce. He was very active figure, of course, for advocating long hours of working at the very beginning of his entrepreneur career. But now he's saying, with AI, artificial intelligence, and many other innovations, very likely our week working hour is only 12 hours long. Of course, that's a dream, but still, Mr. Dunham, you know, next generation of innovation, what does it mean to the fate of companies like Alibaba and some of the others, Amazon too?
Well, I do think they want to lead it. I mean, 5G is going to change the world in terms of the way we communicate. Artificial intelligence will. I think Jack Ma in his new role is going to be interested in that as an educator, as a philanthropist, and as a venture capitalist, the fund that he co-founded in Shanghai. I think that all of these issues that you talk about are things that he's going to be interested in down the road. And if Alibaba is going to continue to be as successful, it will have to adapt to the changes, virtual reality, artificial intelligence, on the cutting edge of the technological changes that are going to affect us.
You see, different generations of entrepreneurs, Professor Liu, have been having different choices. For example, you also see in the relevancy of the United States, Bill Gates, for example, had the very height of his career. He chose to retire. Of course, he's also later into philanthropy. Now the foundation is such an impressive institution in the world. Having said that, though, how do you see these entrepreneurs' professional choices? You know, some continued along the career path which they chose at the very beginning. Others, in the middle of their career, they would love to take a totally different road or something that is really to their personal interest in a way, and also personal development together with so-called the fate of the human being.
Yes, some entrepreneurs remain to be entrepreneurial for all his life. Like Zuckerberg, he's still, you know,
well, he's pretty young, I have to say.
Yes, but with a big empire, you know, in terms of revenue and in terms of the impact. But he likes to stay in that way. And some, you know, they just, you know, use the company as a mean to gather a better tool to impact on the society. And so like Jack Ma, and you know, he's more or less following the track of Bill Gates. So after I gather enough the financial facilities, I will go to philanthropy, I will go to support education, support people's health, etc., etc. So that's, I really call it a sort of enlightenment.
And he's also working for the UN, of course, in some kinds of capacity.
Right,
very interesting you talk about
and
Bill
also
Gates.
I think that's a big contrast to Steve Jobs, who died on the job, and by being too much a greedy professional in that particular area.
Interesting you do this comparison and talk about philanthropy, because back in the year 2016, I did have a one-on-one with Jack Ma in a very crowded meeting room, and I interviewed him. G20 Hangzhou Summit, there is him sharing his understanding on philanthropy and social responsibility. Take a listen. You have been very keen on doing social responsibility, and many wonder, are you follow the role model of Bill Gates and many others? Is China going to have another social responsibility model like you?
Well, I think in China we have so many great people that are doing the wonderful things on philanthropy and social responsibility. It is not only a responsibility to do something, it is our passion. It is my personal passion that focuses on education and environment. And it's a great honor that in your life that you can do something that is helping people. So I think, yeah, Bill Gates absolutely, he sort of set a wonderful role model, and Warren Buffett. There are so many great leaders in the world that we can benefit from. And China is the second largest economy today. And I do believe that more and more Chinese business leaders and entrepreneurs are going to put their money inside. It's not about money. It's about time, it's about efforts and a passion.
That was Jack Ma, 2016, and a one-on-one with me on the sidelines of G20 Summit. Of course, I talked to him from time to time, both at the winter Davos and also at different international occasions. Having said that, though, this is very interesting. We have just witnessed from aspiration of devoting more time and energy to the philanthropy, now to real action this year for Jack Ma to step down from the chairmanship of Alibaba and take on a very different stage of his life. But having said that, though, it's not just about philanthropy doing it in China, but how to combine development with philanthropy. Now, you see Mr. Ma, together with his company, as well as many other Chinese companies, very passionate about developing both the African market and co-development projects in Africa, to be able to see it another stage of development for emerging developing countries to be leapfrog, as they say, with available technology. Mr. Denham.
Yes, I mean, I see him as a philanthropist on two levels. The educational level, improving education in China, rural education, but this global vision. And it's very similar to Bill Gates, who has projects, many projects in Africa, though focusing more on health. I think the idea of development and his skill in technology really gives an advantage. And the fact that he is not just going to be a donor of money, but he's going to be involved, and some of his innovative thought can be part of the process. I think that's a real advantage. It's not just a rich person giving money. He's giving his skill, he's giving his time, and I think that is beyond money.
Think about it, Professor Liu. China was being able to do this leapfrog with available technologies. Instead of using credit cards, which we also use, but now everybody do mobile payment, both with Alibaba's service and with Tencent's service. So this is kind of leapfrog that many other developing countries could also produce of their own version in a way. So some kinds of experiences that can be shared by Jack Ma, by his company, and also by the China practice with the rest of the world, particularly in the developing world, Professor.
But you must not really ignore one condition. That is really the infrastructure development.
That's right.
You know, he's not there to pave all the wires, you know, set up the satellites in the outer space, etc. So Chinese government has done a great deal to improve the communication infrastructure, and also that you know, Jack Ma won't really ship Alibaba if the roads are still very bumpy and muddy.
Like
so
the delivery, you cannot do it anyway.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think, you know, based on that condition, and he can really do a lot more by, you know, providing innovation and empower people, and also to support the small and micro businesses.
Right.
So then, you know, to share the technology so that they can go instant global and leapfrog.
This is really bringing us to a very interesting question, which is, what is the relationship between, you know, private tech entrepreneurs like Jack Ma, like Ren Zhengfei, like Pony Ma of Tencent, with, you know, the Chinese government, the Chinese policies? How would you describe it, particularly at the time when one generation's representative like Jack Ma is about to retire from the current position? Professor Liu, many are asking these questions.
Yes, I think they are all very resolved and very wise business managers, starting from entrepreneurship, but they have different vision. And some are really more dedicated for what they have been doing very successfully and just grow on the basis of it. And some just, okay, you know, I have more interesting thing to do, and my focus
My question more is about what is the relationship between his generation of Chinese entrepreneurs, private entrepreneurs, and with that of government policies and government strategies. That's really my question.
Okay. Yeah, I think, you know, China has really, during the past several decades, China has gone through a number of generations already in terms of business leadership.
More about it.
So to start with, those proprietors of Gotihu, they grow their micro businesses, and some of them have already been washed out of the, and then, you know, after the Chinese policy is introduced for incorporation, some set up, you know, corporation limited, etc., instead of being a proprietor. And then, you know, there's IPO available for some of the private companies to grow into public companies. And then now, you know, with the blessing of digital technology, and many of them just grow explosively, and also with Chinese accession to WTO, then they grow not only instantly digital, but also global. So that's the past Jack Ma has been doing. And actually, you mentioned about Pony Ma and the Ren Zhengfei. They are all, you know, the great contributor to the internet technology, and also they are, you know, they are still having the drive to move it forward.
Mr. Dunham, from a American journalist perspective, how do you see these individuals and represented by these individuals, Jack Ma included, this whole generation of Chinese private entrepreneurs?
Well, I see them as private entrepreneurs who've managed the political thicket of China. They've stayed out of national politics. They've managed to have their businesses dovetail with the policies, particularly the international economic policies of the government. They've also benefited from some protectionism, from keeping American companies or competitors out of the market, like Amazon, so that they build a strong base. I mean, Tencent, Baidu, and Alibaba have all benefited from government policies, but they have been run as entrepreneurial startups that have become huge companies, run as private companies.
And be able to make sure to take the opportunity of the vast Chinese market. That is certainly one of the things they've been successfully doing. Professor Liu, what do you think? Competition or lack of competition?
Well, I think it's, first of all, innovation, because, you know, when all opportunities are equal to, at least to many of the Chinese companies, and why our Chinese companies are not there, you know, to reap the entire opportunity. So they are there, they are the business genius. And two is that, okay, foreign companies, they, you know, actually Mr. Sun, who supported Jack Ma, really he got a windfall of profit, although he's not really operating it.
We're talking about Mr. Sun from the SoftBank.
Yeah, from the SoftBank, and also I know that one South African guy who invested into Pony Ma, you know, became the richest person in the entire country, meaning that directly or indirectly, they all benefit from the growth of the business empire and also the business climate that China has provided.
Very interesting discussion. Now, at the end of the day, if you think about it, his next aspiration, which is education, that has not been just the core issue that Jack Ma has been advocating, but also Ren Zhengfei, for example, the founder of Huawei, instead of talking about geopolitics, every time when he talked to journalists, including in a special program with us just 2 months ago, also specifically talk about education for the society. Why these mega entrepreneurs, shall we say, in the world, particularly from China, emphasize so much about education? What do you think they are seeing right now?
Capacity building is the surest thing to shore up the national strengths and also for business efficiency. So education is the solution. And plus that we do see that there is a dire need for upgrading the educational facility and also to upgrading the skills of educators. And now, you know, this is really the time for those big tycoons to support this.
I see.
And this is a goal to, you know, together with the national goal, and also this has touched the real heart of the ordinary Chinese folks who care more about the capacity of the next generation.
I think this is really the core of the development, isn't it? About innovation. How could you have innovation? Of course, education is key. It depends on what kind of quality of education we're talking about. Before we go, Mr. Dunham, this generation of Chinese entrepreneurs run into one difficulty, that is geopolitics. With the limited time, we have 1 minute less, less than 1 minute left for you to talk about it. How are they going to face an ever more complicated picture?
I think the best way they can do it is to be personalities like Jack Ma, to transcend politics. I think people around the world see him as a successful entrepreneur. They don't see him as an agent of the Chinese government. I think that's the best way to do it, to present yourself as a successful business person rather than being an ultra-nationalist. It's true whether you're in the U.S., whether you're in South Africa, Britain, or China.
Great advice, I would say. Rick Dunham, Liu Baocheng, thank you so much. All the best that we should say also to Jack Ma, who is a very respected entrepreneur from China, from his generation. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for being with us. You're watching World Insight with me, Tian Wei. The program's coming to you live from Beijing. Next on today's program, Pulitzer Prize winner Thomas Friedman's view on China-U.S. trade and how to look past the noise in our media-saturated landscape. Back, you're still watching World Insight with me, Tian Wei. The program is coming to you live from Beijing. China and the U.S. announced last week that they have agreed to return to the negotiating table in Washington in early October. It will be the first face-to-face meeting since the tit-for-tat escalation of tariffs in recent months. One question is how to avoid the worst-case scenario and work for the better outcome. This is what many global thinkers are contemplating right now. Among them, Thomas Friedman, the three-time Pulitzer Prize winner and one of the most esteemed journalists in the world today. Among the pessimistic voices, he strikes a positive tone on the sideline of the China Development Forum, describing China-U.S. trade relations as one country, two systems, depicting the deep links of the world's two largest economies. In an exclusive interview with me recently, he explained it all. Your speech this time at the China Development Forum went viral in China.
That's an honor.
Both in Chinese and in English. People are very curious as to why, at this moment, when others sound so pessimistic, you wanted to have a rather encouraging tone about the bilateral relations.
Well, I wanted to be constructive. You know, Tian, I said in my talk, and I've said many times, I believe America and China are also one country, two systems. You know, we're one country in the sense that our fates are really tied together. America cannot rise, I don't believe, without a healthy relationship with China, and China cannot rise without a healthy relationship with America. And we've got to find a way for our two systems to maintain this healthy interdependence. And being here now in Beijing, talking to people, coming from Washington, D.C., talking to people there, it's clear to me that there is a will to solve this problem. But from my point of view, why be constructive? Let me just say, I don't believe there's any big problem in the world, climate change, cybercrime, nuclear proliferation, that can be effectively dealt with if China and America are not working together. And I don't think there's any problem in the world that can't be fixed if China and America are working together, no matter how big.
There is one big uncertain factor, that is the factor of leadership. And what the one sitting in the office consider as the quality of leadership. Right. So when the president has been saying from the very beginning this will be more about a transition rather than a more sophisticated bilateral relation agenda setting, do you think that might happen?
Right. I think we're at a very critical moment. Let me tell you how I see this, Jen. One is that, so America and China have a very unique relationship. We are economic rivals and economic partners. We are technological rivals and technological partners. We are geopolitical rivals and geopolitical partners. Without U.S.-China cooperation, there would have been no Paris Climate Agreement. Okay? So we have a very unusual relationship. Now, there are people in America who see China as the new Soviet Union. They think it's just another communist country, you know, that wants to take us, to take over the world. Okay? That is not how I see it. I think we have a very unique relationship with China, and we don't want to turn this into a Cold War. Okay? China, remember, with Russia, the only thing Americans bought from Russia was vodka, caviar, and nesting dolls. With China, we are completely interdependent. Okay? So, to me, the question is really three things. There's the bilateral trade issue, there's the Huawei issue, and there is global geopolitics. And unfortunately, my administration has not clearly delineated each one of those, and so they kind of blend together. At the same time, there's confusion in Washington to exactly what is President Xi Jinping's bottom line. Does he want to retain all the advantages China got early on in the WTO negotiations? Is he ready to compromise? Is he ready to put it into legal language? There's a new Foreign Trade Investment Act now being written here. So I think both sides, we need a timeout. Step back, okay, let's lower the temperature, and let's go for some confidence-building measures where we say we can prove to China we're not out to make you into an enemy, to permanently tariff you, and President Xi can prove to President Trump that I'm actually ready to do changes, but I need to do them my own way, and in Chinese context.
Some suggest it's already in the process of decoupling.
Well, that's
Are
what
you
I'm fighting
worried about
again.
that?
I'm deeply, deeply worried about it, because we have our hardliners, you have your hardliners, both sides have people who think the worst of the other, and I am the enemy of those people. I think we are one country, two systems, and the world is better for that.
When a correspondent being parachuted into a country,
Absolutely.
there's very few references that he or she can refer to in terms of how to judge, how to have a round of references, and how to eventually put things into perspective for the readers at home, particularly when you have another editor at home trying to make it ever more dramatic given the pressure of social media recently. So it's a process, and yet I'm afraid we are in a very critical time to still do this learning curve. So this is a lot of things all at the same time, as you illustrated well. Technology, the way people want to create their own image and thinking, and the politics and the geopolitical change. So how do you see these entangled uncertainties?
Well, it puts a premium, therefore, on being serious as a reporter. I've been coming to China since 1989. So I've come, I believe, every year since 1989. So I've been able to travel all over the country. I do not, unfortunately, speak Chinese, but I spent a lot of time here trying to learn, the country. And so over time, you develop what I call some depth perception. Not just surface, but some depth perception.
That is the most important, most treasurable element.
And the other thing you develop are people you trust. So you're one of the people I trust. So if I come, I have a story idea, I can say, Chen, am I on the right track here? You know what I mean? But if I'm just parachuted in here, I have no one I trust. I may come with biases or misperceptions. You're going to get that problem. But it can be true for Chinese reporters coming to America too. You know what I mean? I see Chinese reporters there often, and to me, it's always about good and bad journalism. And you can do it in Chinese, you can do it in English, you can do it from Beijing, you can do it from Washington, and you're always going to have both.
When you have newspapers or websites of news that are becoming ever more partisan. Tom, I know you face a situation just like that, particularly with the election ever more closer. So how are you still going to be able to relatively standing as neutral and be able to give your views? I mean, after all, you're working for the New York Times, which has been portrayed by Donald Trump, at least, as the quote-unquote fake news. One could tell from this comment the relationship between New York Times and your president. So what about that?
So it's a moment where you really have to keep your head as a journalist. The president's attacked me personally.
I love that. Keep your head.
Keep your head. Keep your head on your shoulder. The president's attacked me personally on Twitter. I responded, but I responded in a respectful way. Okay. But you've got to keep your head in a couple of ways.
How come you're responding in a respectful way? If you are not responding in a respectful way, maybe in the way that your president did, you're going to be hot, probably even hotter than today. Tom, why you didn't?
I respond in a respectful way because I'm not just responding to him. I'm responding to his supporters. And when they see me respond, defend myself, but respecting him, they will respect and listen to my message more. I recently changed my business card, Jen. It used to say Thomas L. Friedman, New York Times Foreign Affairs columnist. It now says Thomas L. Friedman, New York Times Dignity and Humiliation correspondent. Okay?
I love that.
Because I have learned over my 40 years as a journalist that the two most powerful human emotions are dignity and humiliation. If I humiliate you, you will never listen. But if I respect you, it's amazing what you'll allow me to say to you. And so that's really a tenet of mine. Now, you know, with the media, we always have to remember that we are not the story. Okay, the story is the story. I'll tell you a story about the New York Times.
That's not easy these
Yeah,
days.
no, exactly.
Everybody wants to
be the story.
The story.
So in 1982, before you were born, I was the New York Times correspondent in Beirut in the Lebanon civil war and Israeli invasion. And my apartment was blown up in June 1982, and my driver's wife and 2 daughters were killed in my apartment. One of the worst days of my life.
One could imagine the anger you have.
And the New York Times did not let me write about it. My apartment was blown up. They said, you're not the story. Look at all the other people whose buildings, you know, and homes have been destroyed. You're not the story. We eventually wrote a little box because other people wrote about it. But that's the ethic, that's the news I was raised in. Today, too many reporters want to be the story. So if I'm covering the White House, I should not be tweeting about the White House, my opinion. If I'm, you know, and the same on China. You can cover China as a story, but don't be tweeting about it. Same for Chinese covering America, okay? The need to separate your opinion from the news is more important than ever. But you also have to keep your head because it's so noisy out there. Yeah. So why am I in Beijing? First, I get the honor of speaking for the, you know, the CDF, but also, I'm a big believer, if you don't go, you don't know. If you don't go, you don't know. And now coming here doesn't mean I know. But it does reduce the chances that I get it wrong. And so I go around, I talk to as many people as I can, and I try to, you know, balance out what I hear to see the signal through the noise. It's always about, for me, what's the signal? What's the story here? And that's
the real trend.
The real trend, because,
just
and it's so important today, Chen, because it's so noisy there. And so that's why I'm actually not on Twitter. The New York Times tweets my column. I occasionally tweet something, but I've never looked at Twitter. I don't know what Twitter looks like. I'm not on Facebook. I don't know what Facebook looks like. And I've never smoked a cigarette. And I plan to die saying all 3 of those things, okay? So, and the reason is it's too noisy. And if I'm always looking, what are they saying about me on Twitter, or Sina Weibo, whatever, then I'm not focused on the signal. I'm focused on me, and I'm not the story.
It's about the story vis-a-vis the egoness of the reporter.
Exactly.
Or
and,
of the host, or of whatever.
Exactly. And the New York Times, CCTV, exists for one reason, to serve the viewers and to serve the readers. Not to serve you, not to serve me.
Where do you think we're going from here? I mean, we could say, Tom Friedman, of course. I mean, you are the biggest name probably of New York Times. Probably one of the very few biggest names in the U.S. media today. And therefore, you have the luxury to go out there and look and being invited and be able to write your views the way you want, with a little bit struggle with the editor, of course. But for most of the others in the trade, what's going to be their fate? I know now, Tom, many of our friends have quit.
Right, yeah, there's no question.
Really experienced, great journalists.
Of my generation and yours, I mean, yeah, there's no question. I'm so happy I had my career when I had it, you know, number one. But I have a daughter who is the executive producer of All Things Considered.
I love that
Weekend
show. Could
edition.
You say hi to her?
I will do that. I talked to her this morning on NPR, and so it's a family business, and so I see, you know, the issues she has to contend with. But at the end of the day, Chen, you know, whether my daughter's working for radio, whether she's 30 years younger than I am, I still believe this, is that good journalism that's produced by good reporting and good analysis still wins, still sells. Doesn't matter if it's on the web, on Sina Weibo, on Twitter, on Chinese TV, or the New York Times. And that's what I always focus on. My view is, if you build a diamond hard reality around your journalism based on good reporting and good analysis, no amount of criticism will stick. And if you don't, no amount of tweeting will save you. So you might as well focus on building the diamond hard reality. It doesn't mean I get it right all the time, but I feel if you come out, if you struggle with it, if you find trusted colleagues where I can come and say, Tian, is this really this or that? You know, as you have in my office in Washington, you know, you'll get more things right than wrong. And if you're doing that, you're doing your job.
Thomas Friedman, sharing his thoughts with us about China-U.S. relations and the ethics of being a journalist, especially in the noisy world of today. And that is all we have for today. If you'd like to see more, try to find us, World Insight CGTN, into your search engine, or check out our YouTube channel. Call us on Twitter, Facebook, and Sina Weibo. From me, Tian Wei, and everyone on the World Insight team, thanks for watching, and tune in again next time for more insights across China and around the world. Good night.